بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. طاسين ميم. تلك آيات الكتاب المبين. نتلو عليك من نبأ موسى وفرعون بالحق لقوم يؤمنون. إن فرعون علا في الأرض وجعل أهلها شيعا يستضعف طائفة منهم يذبح أبناءهم ويستحيي نساءهم إنه كان من المفسدين. ونريد أن نمن على الذين استضعفوا في الأرض ونجعلهم أئمة ونجعلهم الوارثين ونمكن لهم في الأرض ونري فرعون وهامان وجنودهما منهم ما كانوا يحذرون. وأوحينا إلى أم موسى أن أرضعيه فإذا خفت عليه فألقيه في اليم ولا تخافي ولا تحزني إنا رادوه إليك وجاعلوه من المرسلين. فالتقطه آل فرعون ليكون لهم عدوا وحزنا إن فرعون وهامان وجنودهما كانوا خاطئين. وقالت امرأة فرعون قرة عين لي ولك ولا تقتلوه عسى أن ينفعنا أو نتخذه ولدا وهم لا يشعرون. وأصبح فؤاد أم موسى فارغا إن كادت لتبدي به لولا أن ربطنا على قلبها لتكون من المؤمنين. وقالت لأخته قصيه فبصرت به عن جنب وهم لا يشعرون. وحرمنا عليه المراضع من قبل فقالت هل أدلكم على أهل بيت يكفلونه لكم وهم له ناصحون. فرددناه إلى أمه كي تقر عينها ولا تحزن ولتعلم أن وعد الله حق ولكن أكثرهم لا يعلمون. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
أحسنتم. طيب الله أنفاسكم. While we wait for the Sayyid, we'll read زيارة Imam Rida عليه السلام. الزيارة المختصرة. أزور سيدي ومولاي علي بن موسى الرضا المرتضى عليه السلام إصالة عن نفسي ونيابة عن والدي ووالدي والدي ومن أوصاني بالدعاء وقلدني الزيارة جميعا قربة إلى الله تعالى. اللهم صل على علي بن موسى الرضا المرتضى الإمام التقي النقي وحجتك على من فوق الأرض ومن تحت الثرى الصديق الشهيد صلاة كثيرة تامة زاكية متواصلة متواترة مترادفة كأفضل ما صليت على أحد من أوليائك. السلام عليك يا ولي الله وابن وليه. السلام عليك يا حجة الله وابن حجته. السلام عليك يا إمام الهدى والعروة الوثقى ورحمة الله وبركاته. أشهد أنك مضيت على ما مضى عليه آباؤك الطاهرون لم تؤثر عمى على هدى ولم تمل من حق إلى باطل وأنك نصحت لله ولرسوله وأديت الأمانة فجزاك الله عن الإسلام وأهله خير الجزاء. أتيتك بأبي وأمي زائرا عارفا بحقك، مواليا لأوليائك معاديا لأعدائك، فاشفع لي عند ربك. السلام عليك يا مولاي يا ابن رسول الله ورحمة الله وبركاته. أشهد أنك الإمام الهدى والإمام الهادي والولي المرشد، أبرأ إلى الله من أعدائك وأتقرب إلى الله بولايتك. صلى الله عليك ورحمة الله وبركاته. أفلح من صلى على محمد وآل محمد. We'll welcome Sayyid Abdullah al-Nakeeb to the pulpit with the last salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلى الله على سيدنا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع نفوسنا أبا القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين، لا سيما بقية الله روحي وأرواح العالمين لتراب مقدمه الفداء. أما بعد، يقول الله في محكم كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أحسب الناس أن يتركوا أن يقولوا آمنا وهم لا يفتنون. Surah Al-Ankabut, ayah number 2, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states, do the people think that they will be left to say we believe and they will not be trialed? Tonight, inshallah, as we would like to start by first and foremost sending our celebratory feelings and congratulations towards the maqam of Imam Sahib al-Asri wa Zaman on the birth of Imam Ali ibn Musa Rida, alayhima afdal as-salati wa salam. One of the most important, arguably, discussions that we can have in this particular time is how to deal with the trials and tribulations in our day and age. And as we begin to understand, there's many traditions that come forward to discuss the importance and the severity of such issues, especially at the end of time. As an example, very famously, the one that we all know very well, the tradition that comes forward and says, holding on to your religion at the end of time is like holding on to what? A hot coal. Other traditions come forward as followers of Ahlul Bayt. As a person comes towards Rasulullah and he says, Ya Rasulullah, I love you. And Rasulullah replies by saying, then prepare yourself for poverty. And he says, what else? He says, oh Rasulullah, I also love Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib. And he replies by saying, if you love Ali, then prepare yourself for bala or calamities as we look towards it. Now, taking this into perspective, many of us would think to ourselves that we will try as much as we can within our life to repel or stay away from something called fitna within our lives. And every time this word comes forward, we often associate it with that which is negative, that which is evil, that which is corrupt. And that's why when someone, as Amir al-Mu'mineen, passes one of his companions or one of the people that lived at the time, he heard him saying the following phrase, "O Allah, I seek refuge from you from all fitan." So Amir looks at him and says, do you wish upon yourself death? He says, no, but I just don't want to be trialed. He says, no, what you're looking towards is not any trial, any particular fitna, but rather say the following lines. He says to him, O man, say, A'udhu billah min mudhillatil fitan, meaning those types of trials and tribulations that will allow you to fault, that you will deviate, that you will become corrupt in one way or another. It says those are the ones that you need to seek refuge from Allah from. And that's why the discussion of fitna is one that is quite interesting, because when we take it out of the realm of that which is being evil and really look into what makes this particular word that Allah has used within the Holy Quran and what we can learn from this particular word. As you know, fitna, as the verse we stated earlier, Allah says, do you think that you'll believe without going through some sort of fitna? Therefore, saying it's not just for those that are evil, but rather those that believe need to delve into this thing that Allah refers to as fitna. Tonight, the discussion, we want to look at it at 3 particular stages to really grasp this particular topic of fitna and how it applies to us, and taking from the life and the example of the life of the man that we celebrate his birth tonight, and what kind of trials and tribulations occurred within his life and what we can learn from them. The first discussion we want to have is, what does the meaning of the word tell us about the usage of it that Allah has used within the Holy Quran? Many times we read phrases, we come across these words in Arabic, but we don't take the time to really decipher these words to see what Allah is trying to tell us through these words. Fitna is one of those words, once we understand what it means, it becomes clear to us what Allah is trying to tell us through the Holy Quran with this usage of the passages. Secondly, and this is the one that will kind of spark an interest in many people's minds, is the question that we want to answer. And the second question we want to answer for tonight is, who or what entity is responsible for putting fitna within your life? So many of us would reply by saying that Allah puts the fitna in our life. But when we look at through the Holy Quran, no, there are a multitude of different fitan put into your life for different purposes. And there are different entities that place them within your life. So looking through the Holy Quran, what does Allah teach us about who puts fitna into your life and what is the outcome of that particular fitna? And that's going to be the interesting discussion for tonight. And third and finally, the importance of seeing a tradition of Amir al-Mu'mineen telling us why Allah would shower a community with fitan. What are the 2 main characteristics that, if these characteristics are seen within a community, that Allah showers them with trials and tribulations? And how is the knowledge of our time pivotal to understanding what we need to do for the Imam of our time, Imam Sahib al-Asri wa Zaman. So inshallah, to start the discussion tonight, please allow me or assist me in blessing the majlis and illuminating our hearts and minds with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Fitna. Like I stated earlier, many people look at it to be something that is a negative connotation. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when using it, where is it derived from? When we now look at the Arabic language, fitna, the way that it was used, was generally used in a sentence to talk about particular elements that have been extracted from the earth. Now pay close attention. When I extract a particular element from earth, it doesn't come, you want to look at gold bars or silver or whatever, jewels or stones that are worth a certain amount of money. It doesn't just come beautiful to you, does it? It needs to go a particular set of, let's say, not experiments, but processes in order for you to have the perfect version of that element at the end. You want to extract gold, you have to put it under severe heat, severe pressure, in order for you to remove all that which is impure from around it, in order for you to see that which is within, that has value. So when we say fitna in this particular aspect, it says fatantul fiddata wa dhahab as an example. It means that I have put these elements that I've extracted through severe heat, severe pressure, and it has overcome them by removing all those impurities and therefore you can see for yourself that which is within. That gem, that thing of value. Likewise, your souls, each and every one of us, in order for us to see, because at the Day of Judgment we can come one day and be like, oh Allah, you didn't really give me a chance to show you who I am, my characteristics, what I am made of. But Allah says, no, I've put you through trials and tribulations. Allah already knows what's within us. But rather He wants you to see what kind of person you are. What you do through each interaction. When there are people watching you and where there is no one watching you except the all-watchful eye of Allah. Now, understanding this particular element, that in order for you to go through trials and tribulations to see that which is within, sometimes we go through trials and tribulations, all those elements are removed, there's nothing inside. And we see those figures in history. That as soon as the trials and tribulations come forward, how they've failed in those instances. So the first understanding we need to take is that Allah uses this and gives us through the Holy Quran all different meanings to it. And that's why He says for the believers, do you think you can say that you are a believer without being trialed, without seeing how you respond to certain trials and tribulations within your life? Number one. Number two, which entities put fitna within our life? Now let's look at it within the Holy Quran, because that's the discussion we want to have tonight. What entities put fitna within your life, and what are the reasons behind each and every one of these fitan being put? The first of which, as we all know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Surah Al-Ankabut that we stated earlier, very clearly states, أَحَسِبَ النَّاسِ أَن يُتْرَكُوا أَن يَقُولُوا آمَنَّا وَهُمْ لَا يُفْتَنُونَ. So we know, understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala places fitna within your life as the first entity in order for you to see your own beauty within your character, in order for you to see how you interact with each and every trial and tribulation. Are you going to overcome it that pleases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Or are you going to fail in that particular trial and tribulation? And the understanding is that you can know yourself, that you are guided through that trial and tribulation. Number two, who can give me another entity that they think is responsible for fitan within our lives through the Holy Quran? Who's responsible for putting fitan within our life? There's two more. Anyone? I heard something. Shaitan. Ahsan, that's number two. Where do we find this within the Holy Quran? Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ya bani Adam, la yuftinannakumul shaitan. Surah Al-A'raf, ayah number 27, very clearly. O sons of Adam, do not allow shaitan to place fitna within your life. And that's why when we go to Surah As-Sad, ayah number 82, Iblis has a conversation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, doesn't he? He says to him very clearly after he's removed from heaven, he says the following lines, قَالَ فَبِعِزَّتِكَ لَأَغْوِيَنَّهُمْ أَجْمَعِينَ. By your might, let's say, I will endeavor to misguide them, to deviate them. So Allah puts fitna to guide us, to see where we do wrong and what we do right, in order for us to see the gem within. Shaitan, on the other hand, as he clearly states, he says, لَأَغْوِيَنَّهُمْ. The second aspect is for إغواء, to deviate you from the path. إِلَّا عِبَادِكَ مِنْهُمُ الْمُخْلَصِينَ. Now, taking this into perspective, as we begin to understand, subhanAllah, there's a tradition that comes past just to showcase to us how shaitan can deviate us from the path. Besides the whispering that he has, the element of placing ideas, thoughts, imaginations within our mind, how he eludes us to go onto those phones when we're by ourselves and what to watch and what to see and what to keep scrolling, etc., etc., etc. There's a tradition that comes forward and says, Amir only meets one of the people that did not join the Battle of Jamal. He says to him, why is it that you did not join in the fight? Look at the reply. It says to him, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, I was on my way to fight alongside you. When I heard this particular voice in my head, that I kept saying the same lines that I thought this was some sort of message from Allah. What was the lines? It says, I was ready in my armor, going towards the battle of Jamal. It says, this line kept coming in my head, saying, Al-Qatil wal-Maqtul fin-nar. Meaning, the killer and the killed is where? In hellfire. Amir only looks at him and says, though, or that he refers to is the words of shaitan, that he clouded your judgment. He says, did he say that which is wrong? He says, no. Look at the delicacy of this, how shaitan gets to you and deviates you. He says, no, shaitan didn't say that which is wrong, but he knew you would understand it as being wrong. He says, the killer and the killed are both in hellfire, yes. But the killer, meaning whomever kills one of the companions that fight alongside Amir al-Mu'mineen. Anyone that kills from those that are on the truth. The killer of those that are on the truth, hellfire. And anyone that is killed by the sword of truth, also where? In hellfire. Therefore the statement, the killer and the killed, is correct in itself. But it's not how you understood it. Stopping him from fighting along Amir al-Mu'mineen's side in the Battle of Jamal. Now take that into perspective and ponder over the fact that there is fitan within our life, that Allah tests us. There are other fitan that are placed within our lives from shaitan to deviate us. Now the third type of fitna, which entity places it through the Holy Quran that we understand? We said Allah places, shaitan places. What's the third entity, do you think, that places fitan within our lives from the Holy Quran? Anyone want to throw a... I don't know if I can comment on that. Sorry. That is a type of fitna from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Entity that placed within. I'm going to read the ayah and then I'll get anyone to answer. Who do you think places the fitan within our lives? قالوا بلى ولكنكم فتنتم أنفسكم. Meaning that you as humans are capable to put fitna within our own lives. Allah to test us, shaitan to deviate us, humans to corrupt. We see this corruption, don't we? I'll give you an example of the very well-known corruption at the time of Muawiyah as an example. Muawiyah is known to do what he did. Many of us hear many of the stories that he did within his time. Amongst them, just to give you an example how you can corrupt people. He says two people came towards Muawiyah to collect their wealth. And this is after the time of Amir al-Mu'mineen. After he passed, the Khalifa of the time, after the Sulh was Muawiyah. So people used to come to him to collect their money. When they would collect, two people would arrive at Muawiyah. He would give one 100 coins and he would give the other 70. So the one that gets 100 coins, he's got a bigger bag, more noise from that particular coin bag, kisses it and leaves. The one that has a smaller pouch of coins is just waiting and says, Muawiyah, is there any problem? He says, no, you tell me, you're still here. He says, I feel like you've given him more. He says, yeah, I've given him 100 gold coins. He says, how much have you given me? He goes, I've given you 70, and that's what you have to take from me. He says, but why did you give him 100? He says, no, he's different. He asks why. Look at the response. He says, I've given him 100 gold coins because with that extra money, I have bought his religion. I say jump, he says how high? So imagine yourself at that particular position thinking that to yourself that, you know what, he's paid him 30 extra gold coins and he's bought his religion for that much money. So you'd think to yourself, this man is looking at Muawiyah, he's thinking, no thank you. You know what he says? Very famously, he says, give me that extra 30, I'll sell you my religion. The funny thing is with corruption, when you begin to see Abdul Malik ibn Marwan, if many of us have heard of him, one of the Khalifas of the Umayyads, they would say that one day a person from the outskirts arrived to collect his money. He arrived on a Friday. On Friday, what do we have? Khutbah al-Jum'ah, the mosque, everyone comes. How did they used to start? Who knows? How did they used to start their speeches? By cursing who? Imam Ali. So this person's on the outskirts of Sham, not familiar with how they do things there. The guy starts off, curses Amir al-Mu'mineen. This guy's like, is this guy serious? Gets the nearest ornament, smacks the guy across the head. The guy's bleeding. Imagine, the person that's giving the sermon, someone's just whacked him with something. So they've taken him towards Abdul Malik. He says, what's the issue? He says, this person's grabbed an ornament and hit the person that's given the sermon. He immediately looks at him. Look at how the corruption works. He looks at him and says, you're not from around here, are you? He says, no. He says, how much do we owe you? He says, this much. Look at the wording. He says, I will double it right now if you do not stay another minute. You leave straight away. I'll double it. He says, but why did you hit him? He says, I want to ask you, if you had one daughter, you're the Khalifa of the Muslimin, if you had one daughter, what would the people say if you married her to someone that's bad? Would you ever do it? He says, I would never do it. I would never marry my only daughter to someone that's wicked, horrible, bad, evil. He says, then how could you say that about Rasulullah when he married his daughter towards Amir al-Mu'mineen? Why would you curse such a man? He says, leave tonight and I will double what we owe you from wealth. You begin to ask the question, why? There is a reason why when Amir al-Mu'mineen was killed in Sham, what was the response? He says, did Ali die? How did he die? The response is when he was in sujood. Cumulatively, what did they say? Did Ali pray? Imagine the corruption you would have to have amongst the people in order for you to make them all believe Amir al-Mu'mineen didn't pray. I want you to imagine that. And that's why when you go towards, as an example, the will of Muawiyah to his son Yazid, sometimes we read things we need to read between lines. In a particular moment, in those particular phrases in the will of Muawiyah, look what it says. It says, this army that I leave behind for you, I have used my knowledge, my wealth, my expertise to prepare them for you. Whatever, whomever gives you a hard time, gives you trouble, does not respond to you in the way that you want, go or send them towards that. What's the condition? He says, but do not let them, once you've attained the victory that you want, stay even one night. Why? Look at the phrase. لَفَسَدَتْ أَخْلَاقُهُمْ. It says their mannerisms will become bad. But when we read between the lines, what does it mean? It means understanding everything that's happened with corruption. I have brainwashed them to such a level that they believed Amir al-Mu'mineen didn't pray on the first level. But it also means if you leave them overnight, if they ask or interact with anyone that challenges their thought process, then they'll begin to ask questions. I don't want that to happen. I want them how I have raised them. Entities that put fitna into your life. Allah to guide and test you. Shaitan to, what did we say? To deviate you. Ahsant. And humans put fitna into your life to do what? To corrupt you. 3 entities that we look at through the Holy Quran. Now why or what can we link to our day and age to learn from this? Once we've understood there are different fitan within our life, Allah uses it in a range of ways within the Holy Quran. Different fitan, good and bad. Sometimes we think of fitan as a test. Like for example, let's give an example. If someone passes away, that's a fitna. Many of us will look at it. How do we respond to that? Do we get closer towards Allah or do we leave the religion? On the flip side, when Allah gifts you, it could be wealth, it could be children, it could be a position. That's also a fitna. And that's why when Rasulullah, someone comes to him in the front rows every other day, praying behind Rasulullah, saying, "Oh Rasulullah, pray for me to give me wealth. Pray for wealth for me." Rasul says, "No, it's not going to benefit you." He says, "No, Rasulullah, please." Mustajab al-da'wah, lifts his hand. Oh Allah, grant him. From the front lines to the second row, to the third row, to the car park, let's say. Back then there was no car park, but no more. That man was not seen. Sometimes fitan are good as well. How are you going to be reacting to that which Allah gifts you? You're going to be thankful? You're going to do the right thing with it? Or is that particular fitna going to deviate you? That's something we need to ponder over. Now, knowing your time, what's the importance? For us, what's the importance? When we look at Imam Al-Rida alayhi salam, how many years was he before he took on the role of imamate? How old was he when he became an imam? He was born 148 AH, died 203. 55 years. At what age was he an imam? Question. In order for us to understand our imams, what they went through, to decipher their lives, when he attains the imamah at 35, 20 years of imamate. He lived under 3 tyrant rulers. Now 35, all of a sudden we have 10 years under Harun, 5 years under Amin. Inshallah. 5 years under Muhammad al-Amin. 5 years under Abdullah al-Ma'mun. 20 years, 17 years of them in Medina. The last 3 in Khurasan. What do we need to learn from these lives? Why was the final 3 years the most difficult for Imam Rida? Many of us will look at him to be in Khurasan. We think that he lived all his life in Khurasan. 3 years. Why did he forcibly take that position in the government? What was the difficulties that were faced? There's a reason why we need to understand the time that we live in. Because when we begin to decipher, we begin to see how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's plan is. There's a reason why Musa's miracle was to split the sea, was to throw a stick and it becomes a serpent. Why was that? Because the people of their time in discussions were known for magic. But what kind of magic can split the sea? What kind of magic can make a stick into a serpent that engulfs all others? In the time of Isa, many people were known for their medicinal knowledge. But what kind of medicine can, on the first level, give birth to a child without a father? What kind of medicine is able to revive that person from the death? What kind of medicine would give eyesight towards that which is blind? When we begin to understand the time that each and every one of them lived in, we begin to understand why the miracles were there. Why Rasulullah's miracle was the Holy Quran. What was the ajwa of the time? Why is it that Amir al-Mu'mineen needed to do that thing within his time of be silent? Why is it that Imam al-Hasan had to do the sulh? Why is it that Imam al-Hussein would be the one to go out and shed his blood for this religion to be remembered and to be eternal? Why? When we begin to decipher and understand the time that we live in, what's occurring, what are the trials and tribulations within each and every one of our times, then we begin to understand. And that's why when we look at Rushayd al-Hajari, one of the companions of Imam Ali alayhi salam, many of us would skip over this name. Rushayd had a different name. Rushayd al-Manaya who knows? Balaya. Amir gave him knowledge that he knew how people would pass away. People would ask him, how is this person going to die? What does Amir al-Mu'mineen taught you? He would tell them. Rushayd, there's many things we can talk about Rushayd, but at the end of his life, in Kufa when he was killed, the way that he was killed, Imam al-Mu'mineen, when he was asked, he said, how did Amir tell you you will die? He says to Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, he says to him, he told me that you will cut off my limbs, my hands, my feet, and then you will cut off my tongue, and I will bleed to death. So Ibn Ziyad, he says to him, he says, I want to make a liar out of Ali, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut your hands, your feet, but I'll keep your tongue so you can tell people that Ali lied. So indeed, they cut his hands, they cut his feet. And they say that his daughter was the one that was carrying his limbs. And she says this following line. She looks at her father in that state. I want you to imagine this person that has just gone through that. They've just severed his hands and his feet for the love of Amir al-Mu'mineen. And his daughter's carrying the limbs. And she says at that moment, he says, Ya abati ma ashaddu ijtihadak. You know, how detailed or in depth or sincere is this ijtihad of yours? Rushayd could have said anything. Look at the words that he says. He says, there will come people at the end of time. Their foresight within their religion is greater than this ijtihad of mine. You think it's easy living in such a time of this much trials and tribulations around us, in our pockets, within our own households, every time we turn on the TV? The tradition goes on to say Rushayd kept speaking about Amir al-Mu'mineen, his merits, his positions, until Ibn Ziyad was forced to cut his tongue, as just like Amir al-Mu'mineen would say. He bled out and died in the love of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Now, the thing we need to take from this, and I think I've taken much of your time, but I end on these two notes. Why does Allah shower a community with trials and tribulations? In Nahj al-Balagha, Amir al-Mu'mineen has two qualities in a community. The first is ahwa'un tuttaba, desires that are followed, that are chased after. So we take example from Islamic history, Umar ibn Sa'd. The reasons that we attribute him going and killing Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam was what? Mulk al-Ray. He wanted the governorship of Ray, and that's why he went off in the famous poetry lines that he says. Do I leave Mulk al-Ray, and Ray is that which I desire, wa Rayu munyati, or do I return with the bloodstains of Hussein on my hands? Desire. Likewise, the Khulafa usurped the right of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Desired a particular position. It didn't matter Rasulullah hasn't been buried. It doesn't matter Amir al-Mu'mineen's hand was raised. It doesn't matter there's a whole army that you're supposed to be behind. It didn't matter there was a daughter behind the door. And that's why the phrase was what? So what? Fatima is there. Well, Rasul, we had no sanctity for him. Do you think we're going to have sanctity for his daughter? The reply was, so what? There is a desire that we want, and we're going to pursue it. Ahwa'un tuttaba' wa ahkamun tubtada'. Rulings that are just made up. And that's why within history you'll begin to see when Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen enters a mosque of Kufa and he sees people praying in the way that they were praying, he says, this is not the right way. You should not do congregation in these particular act of worship. The tradition, what does it says? Four corners of the mosque was the phrase that was uttered. Wa sunnata, who knows? Umara. Oh, the sunnah of, not Rasulullah. It wasn't at the time of Rasulullah. This was forbidden. It was innovated. History shows during the reigns of the Khulafa, there was Salat al-Jum'ah prayed on a Wednesday, Salat al-Subh prayed with 4 rak'at, and what was added, what was removed. Fitan will be showered. So I end on this note, inshallah. But I leave it in a light-hearted note, knowing and understanding the time that we live in will allow us to have an insight on the type of fitan that we are going to be faced with, that our children will be faced with. And that's why there's traditions that come forward and say very clearly, do not raise your child like you were raised, because they live in a time different than yours. Amongst many that we have. The tradition I leave you with tonight, inshallah, a very light-hearted one, where ever a time comes when Al-Ma'mun is trying to test Imam Rida alayhi salam in front of people, in front of companions. Amongst them, he would come to Imam Rida and he says, Ya ibn Rasulullah, where did you find this statement that says, you know, that Amir al-Mu'mineen, your grandfather, is Qasimul Jannati wan Nar? Where did you get this? That he's going to be in the heavens, dividing in the mahshar, those that go towards heaven, those goes towards hell. People are there. He's in a particular position of difficulty. What does he say? Imam Rida replies by saying to Al-Ma'mun, he says, Oh Ma'mun, doesn't your father narrate from your grandfather that the love of Ali is Iman? He says, indeed. He says, doesn't he also narrate that hatred towards Ali or Bughd Ali is kufr? He says, indeed he does. He says, therefore he has divided heaven and hell, hasn't he? Qasama idhan, qasama al-jannatu wan-nar. You begin to see these particular traditions and the way, when we begin to see when he said it, in what circumstance and who was there and what it led to, in types of dangers of the time to gain popularity with people and to remove it, is of the utmost importance. So inshallah we use the topic from tonight to understand first and foremost the time that we live in, how to raise ourselves, our children, the future generation, by first understanding the types of fitan that we are going to face now and in the near future. And I end on this note, inshallah. But before we do, inshallah, Al-Fatiha li Ruh Al-Hajj Ali Janabi. Al-Fatiha li Ruh Al-Hajj Ali Janabi. Inshallah, we can recite it. And tomorrow, we also have a mawlud here at Salah time. So, Al-Fatiha for the Ruh of Al-Hajj Ali Janami. All together, بس مسبوقة 3 of your loudest salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.